so let me show what's going on. If you guys have seen some of the demos, you're familiar with this little Galaga game that's going on. Let me run it for a second. I can shoot guys, just as always. I can get blown up, apparently, quite easily. Anyway, so there you go. Now, when I run it, now I'm getting all these errors after it runs in a bunch of code that is not yet integrated to the rest of the code base. It's not being called, which is why we can run. Right there, what I was doing was running all that stuff actually from inside the compiler, right, as opposed to compiling it to an executable and running that. And when you run inside the compiler, it lets you run things staged, right? So you can run part of the program without compiling the whole program. And if you haven't seen that, I show that in the very first demo. So anyway, I was running the part of the program that I needed to run to do the Galaga stuff. But then after that's done, there's all this other stuff that isn't compiling yet. And what that is some font rendering code. I took the font rendering stuff that uses FreeType to render fonts, but there's a whole layer that renders the fonts to textures and does interesting things with textures to manage them and do the layout and stuff. And I've used that for the font rendering in Braid and in the Witness, and I was porting that over to this language so that I could have some more real code and just expand the complexity of stuff that I'm doing. And that file, as you can see, it's over 1,000 lines. Oh, I should have gotten somebody made an Emacs mode for this language, and I haven't put it on this machine yet. It's too bad. Anyway, though, you know what? Why don't I try it out? I'm going to take a second to... the easiest thing to do will be to put my .emacs on Dropbox from my other computer. Oh, my Dropbox folder is turned off because my computer wasn't booting. All right. Let me give this person a little privacy for a second. I'm going to turn off my desktop capture and go into my email and get the thing. And there's the link. So I'm going to go into my .emacs, and I'm just going to paste all this stuff at the beginning, because why not? And let's hope it works. Let's exit Emacs just in case. I could just rerun that, but whatever. All right, so C. Hey, look, it's highlighted, and I probably don't have to fight with tabs and stuff. So that's cool. Thank you. All right. So here's the font code that I'm porting over, and it's 1,300 lines of stuff. It's a little messy, some stuff's commented out, some stuff I'm still figuring out. But anyway, it does all this stuff, arranging fonts into textures, and then there's another file, FreeType, here, that's just going to do the interface between my font layer and the FreeType library. Because the FreeType library is in C or C++ or something, I need to describe all those data structures to code in this language. Had a cracker on the roof of my mouth there. Oh, it's still there. Freaking cracker. Anyway, so basically, I'm going to hope that my alignment for all these struct members and stuff matches up to whatever the C++ compiler thinks it is. And if it's not, then that'll make a good opportunity for me to work on that. And stuff where there's some struct, but I don't ever need to know what's inside, but I just want some type checking, I have just defined as empty structs here. So for example, char map rec, it's like in some face rec structure that I need to do things with, there's this char map rec that it's just a pointer. Pointers to things are always the same size as each other, so we don't need to know what it's a pointer to. We never use it, but I think I use that field maybe. Maybe, I don't know. Probably not. No. Anyway, you know, it needs to know that there's a pointer to something there, which is why I define those empty structs and put that there. So there's all this code that hasn't run yet. You know, this has just been sort of dropped in. And these error messages are to some degree or other legitimate mistakes. However, these are not all correct right now, these error messages. It's saying, look at all these undeclared identifiers, and some of these are really undeclared. Like there's a myswap2 and a myswap4, and if I search for those, I won't find them. Myswap, it's not there. It's not there, right? I'm calling it, but it's not defined. Those are supposed to be, you know, platform-specific endianness conversions. You know, if we ask for reversed byte order, stuff like that. I don't remember if we need those on x64 or not. But the point is, those are legitimate error messages. However, some of these other ones, so in line 572, I'm calling this function get, oh, I'm calling it with a dot. Okay. So here's the thing. It's giving me just undeclared identifier as though I weren't calling this with dot. The reason it's dot is because I just transliterated all this code from C++. Remember, we only do dot in this language right now if there's actually a data member called get. We don't do member functions right now, and maybe we never will. It's unclear. So what I need to do is improve the quality of these error messages to at least give me more information. Say, oh, there's no field called get in that struct. Now, the reason these error messages are so incorrect now or incomplete is, if you remember last week when I did a compiler stream, I talked about how I was redoing the dependency system and I was changing the way that parts of code wait on each other in order to compile, because this language doesn't have header files. The compiler needs to do some intricate things in order to make sure that code compiles in the correct order. The old system was all worked by looking at identifiers, and before you went into a certain stage of the pipeline, it would set up dependencies that tagged identifiers in certain ways. And because that system was all about identifiers and where they pointed at, then all my undeclared identifier reporting error messages were sort of baked into that system. So then I ripped that system out and I replaced it with the new thing, but now the error messages aren't so hot. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go into, let's say, these are probably in Code Manager, undeclared. Yeah. So basically what I do, technically, right now, you guys may have seen, if you watched last time, a circular dependency error, which is, you know, when the compiler decides there's a cycle of things all waiting on each other, which is like a program construct that should not be legal, right? Now, technically, undeclared identifiers is sort of a type of circular dependency, because if something's undeclared right now, it doesn't mean it would be undeclared forever, because again, you can load stuff in any order. So you might, if something else successfully compiled, or if some other file loaded later or something, an identifier that's undefined when you first encounter it might become defined later. However, when the compiler gets stuck, what we do is we look for undeclared identifiers, and if we report any, then we just return and we don't do this circular dependency report. If we have no undeclared identifiers, then we decide that it's a legit circular dependency and we report everybody that's waiting. So this undeclared identifiers is like a thing that I rewrote this morning, and it's very basic. For every declaration in our pipe of things that's waiting to have their types inferred, we check to see if anyone yielded on an identifier. Basically, if you remember last time, I showed that there's a big array, and you basically move left to right down that array, and you try to infer the types of things. And if you ever hit something that's not ready yet, then you yield, right? And this is not a thread or fiber yield. I'm just yielding control back to the main loop, but it's easy to think about it as a yield, right? Now, when I do that now, I say, well, here's the thing that I couldn't figure out on each declaration in the program. Here's the thing that stopped me from continuing, right? If that's an identifier, then generally, the thing about that identifier that stopped me from continuing is it's either not defined or its type is not inferred yet. So, if it's an identifier and it's not resolved, then I say, aha, this must be our problem. It's undeclared. So I just need to get more intricate about this error message. And in fact, the way to do that is very simple. If I look at, this is C++ code on the left, of course. Here's my declaration for an identifier. And if it's connected with a dot to something else, like before I try to do a dot style function call, if you have a dot b, then b will set this struct dereference expression to point at a. So basically, I can say, I'm going to start with a very vague error message, and then I'll make it more involved. If ident has a struct dereference expression, right, then we say something new, otherwise we say the old thing. And what we'll say is identifier is not a field of some struct. And we're going to fill in what some struct is later. But for now, let's just compile that. So, all right. So now it's giving me the right kind of error. So identifier get is not a field. This is not a field. That's not a field. So now we want to identify the struct. Now the way we're going to do that, when a struct gets bound to an identifier, so if I go back to, right, so what happens is, you say like a texture map is bound to some struct whatever. This struct whatever is like an anonymous struct, but we stick a name on its field when it gets bound to something like this. But a struct may not have that name. So what I want to do is I want to go in here and check to see if that name exists. If I look in parser, we'll see ast struct is a thing, and it's got a bunch of stuff. And bound name will be set to the name if that ever happens. So I'm going to say some type definition is the inferred type, and, well, that sure better exist, but if that exists and it's a struct description and what was it called? Bound name, bound name, bound name. If all that is true, I'm just going to copy this into two error messages right now of struct %s, and it's this again. Put that on a new line because it's maybe getting a little long. There we go. Whoops, missed that. All right, see if that worked. Okay, so that's great. I don't know why. So this one was correctly identified, the struct, right? You know what? I should continue on and tell you where it is. So I'm going to say I really, yeah, all right. Report info defin. So this is the inferred type of the struct. No, I don't want that actually. I don't care about that. I know that this is true. That is the site that I'm complaining about. So here is the location of the struct, right? All right. So now I get that info. You know what? Instead of info, info is not right. No label. Because I just find the word info there. I think info should be for things that are their own message. Yeah, okay. So get is not a field struct pool 572. Oh, that's not right. Right, okay. Yeah, that's the wrong site. So I do need to have inferred the type of the thing to do this. So if we got that type, sorry, the expression that I put in there is actually the expression just to the left of the dot, which of course is going to be on the same line, right? All right, so it's at pool line 25. Let's check that out. Whoops, wrong copy of that. Line 25, right? So that pointed me at the right place. Now this one, it's not a field of some struct, but let me go see where that is. Line 647 of font. Oh, that's interesting. And the error is at 654. Right, using was broken back when I did this, right? So it's saying, okay, font is a pointer to dynamic font, and I guess dynamic font isn't resolved, which is interesting. I wonder why not. Dynamic font. Well, it's there. So this is a weird thing. So dynamic font interesting. It clearly exists. So something about the way that I'm doing type inference is causing this to block. Like it's probably blocking on some other error. This is the interesting thing is now that I've got this new system put together, right? Or mostly put together, some of the reason this doesn't compile correctly might be due to the compiler itself, and some of it might be legit mistakes in the code. Maybe what I'll do is I'll use these error messages to keep looking for legit. I'm going to check this in. Some struct is still a problem. We want it to clearly identify that for some reason dynamic font is not ready. Okay. In fact, why don't I put this in my file of stuff? My to-do list is basically over here, and I just pile stuff at the top of this. Oh. Did that copy? Yeah. All right. So this is going in my to-do list so I don't forget it. I'll look at commit. All right. So let me widen this. I guess it's too wide. Well, let me actually go then and fix some of these legit problems. So let's go and fix that get. That's all we need to do there. Whoa. It wants a pointer to a pool. I'm going to skip these. It's good that these are still happening because I want to actually fix that bug. But for morale reasons and for variety, and also because it might give me more information about what's wrong, I'm just going to go through and fix all the things in here that are actually mistakes. So let's see. All these num temporary glyphs are suspicious, right? That looks like a using that's not working. Num temporary glyphs. Get string width in pixels. That's just me forgetting to use this font. So num temporary glyphs, I'll go to that, is in theory a member of, oh, it's not a member of dynamic font. So, okay, here's the thing. In C++, this code, most of the arrays were represented as you often do in low-level C++, non-modern C++, where you had like a count and then a pointer to the thing. So this temporary glyphs array was a pointer to a thing called temporary glyphs, and then an int called num temporary glyphs, right? And I transcribed that, and like halfway through transcribing it, I decided to make this into a dynamic array directly in the language because, hey, why not? And there's a few arrays in here, like I've got some to-dos in here to do that with more of these arrays, because it'll tidy up the code and make it better, and it'll test an important part of the language. Like, if dynamic arrays are really going to be useful in the long term for high-end game development, you need to be able to use them with arbitrary allocators and whatever, and you have to feel like they're a low overhead construct anyway. So I want to start using them so that I make sure that those things happen, right? So all these num temporary glyphs, right, are like, here's a thing that was setting the array to two things. I don't remember. I have like this null sentinel there. I don't remember why I was doing that. I'm just going to not do that. I think that was an aspect of the array storage thing I was doing. So I'm going to go array add font.temporary glyphs glyph. All right. I don't need to ensure anything. Well, I guess I want to clear it out. Font.temporary glyphs.count. Remember, this is not a language that's trying to wrap everything, so I can just set the count on this array to 0 to reset it. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to add a thing. All right, let's see if we get fewer error messages. Procedure call is missing argument effect flags. On line 654. That's interesting. Oh, because I had an error earlier in the function, it wasn't telling me this other error because the compiler tries to not, it tries not to do the C++ thing of showering you with errors. So, sometimes by fixing an error, you can reveal new ones. So do glyph substitutions takes the font as the first argument. And we've got a signed versus unsigned because, so casting, in this language I'm being more strict about casting than C++ often is. Oh, of return value 1. Sorry, not of the argument. Wait, return value 1. If I had better editor integration. One thing I want to do is I want to change the syntax of cast, not to put the type way back here because that was a bad decision. But so generally, I'm having to insert some explicit casts in the code. Oh, this is especially bad, but you know, I'm keeping an eye out for when I do that. And part of it may just be that the code is being very unfortunate in terms of what data types it's using in different places. And usually that's a sign that your code should get a pass over. But I also want to see, after doing that, if I still am happy with how many casts there are or if there's too many. And what that means. It's just an interesting experiment. All right. So we got rid of a couple of those. Let's go get all of these. So all these num temporary glyphs should not be there. So I'm just going to go num temporary. That was commented out. I'm going to do the same thing here. Oh, here I'm just adding glyphs, right? This is a function that piles more glyphs. So I'm just going to get rid of that. And I'm going to say array add to, whoops, not and, to temporary glyphs, the zero glyph. Clean up. Do we need this zero glyph stuff anymore? I don't think we do. And in fact, since my policy was to delete it before, I'm going to delete it there. Why not? All right. 895. Well, I'll just search. Anywhere there's num temporary glyphs? Ensure temporary glyphs. Okay, we're not going to do the zero glyph thing. In fact, why don't I search for all zero glyph and just get rid of that. What is this add glyph to temporaries? This was a whole thing. Oh, right. Okay, this also advances. So basically, to render text, you pick a bunch of glyphs, which are pointers to little structures for each character, and then you pile them in, and this thing computes how wide they are, which you probably want to know in some cases. So why don't I use that everywhere? Maybe I just wasn't doing that for the zero glyph. Okay, I'm not doing it here. I could do it here. Because this is just doing the width explicitly and this other thing. So we factor this together with add glyph to temporaries, maybe. So hopefully if this code comes out substantially shorter than the original, that'll be nice, both because I'm using arrays and the language is a little more concise and you don't have header files and all that stuff. The idea is we end up in a better situation. Oh. And this one, you know, I didn't have an array find when I started doing this because I did the polymorphic stuff after this, but now that I have a polymorphic array find, I can just call it instead of this whole function. All right, so what was I doing? What was I doing? I was, well, I was looking for zero glyph and getting rid of it, and I did that. So now I was looking for num temporary glyphs and getting rid of that. Here, I'm just iterating over each glyph, and so I don't have to do any of this nonsense, and I can say for temporary glyphs it. Except, really, I mean, refactor didn't our add glyph, what was that function called? To temporaries just compute this width anyway. Why are we doing it again? I don't know. Maybe there's a good reason. Probably there isn't. Here I have this marked overload. The reason is because we don't have function overloading right now. So there were two versions of this convert to temporary glyphs function, so I had to make a 2 and call that. All right, so here again, I can just say for temporary glyphs, blah. This one goes over an integer range, so I can't do the same thing. But all right. All right, well, we'll see. Okay, so we have an int versus float problem, line 1030. Oh, my sum is a U32, and get glyph width in pixels returns a float, which is not a good idea. Like, I think at some point I decided this should be a float, and it really shouldn't. It should be on, what size is advance? Advance is S16. I'm just going to return that. That'll upcast to a U32 just fine. I guess advances can be negative. Well, why am I returning U32? I'm just going to make all these S64, signed 64-bit numbers, and that's probably going to be fine. All right. So we have fewer num temporary glyphs problems. We have a temporary glyphs problem, though. What's going on there? I don't have a font argument here. Because I pulled this over from C++, these were all member functions, right? So I often forget to do this because I just deleted the dynamic font : off the front. So in pixels 3, who's calling this? Nobody. Nobody is calling this function. Why don't we just comment it out? What do we want to do next? Strings match. We don't need strings match because we support double equals supposedly now for strings. I haven't tested that super thoroughly, but I demoed it, so hopefully it still works. Okay, let's start taking these from the top, skipping these couple weird ones. So S in line 1081. This is very, very typical, just crunching through a bunch of errors kind of programming. What was S? S is supposed to be the feature label. So I don't have bitwise operators right now, and I don't know if I will, or if I do, they probably won't have the names of the C++ bit operators, because the main use of bitwise operators in C and C++ is for flags, and I don't think you should need them for flags. So because flags should be a lot more convenient to use anyway. So once you do that, it's up in the air whether you need operators for bit manipulations. So I just made functions right now, but it's kind of a pain in the ass to do all this stuff with functions as well. Like, look at I'm ORing some shifts, and yeah, I should probably write this a different way to make it clearer, but whatever. Anyway, what this is doing is it's just making a U32 out of the first 4 bytes of a feature label in a specific order, and then it's comparing that against other features. Like there's a 4-character feature, like maybe ital means italics or whatever. I forget how it works. It's font stuff. I'm trying to fit 64 bits into 32 bits. Where are we doing that? Oh, because these bitwise things, I'm just going to do this. Tag cast tag 64 U32. The reason I had to do that is because these bitwise functions are not polymorphic, and they all operate on unsigned 64-bit right now. Now, when you have operators for those, again, it's very easy for the compiler to switch the types of the operators based on the types of the operands. And you lose that, or at least you don't totally lose. Like I could make them be polymorphic functions now, I guess. Maybe I should do that as the next step in implementing bitwise operations. All right, so now what's it complaining about? Pointer versus non-pointer. We wanted a pointer to a font feature, and we're given a font feature. Right, is features... Wait, where? Oh, because we're returning a pointer to a font feature. Okay. So here's the thing. This array of font features, let me go up there. This is an array by value. So we're going to iterate over it by pointer, right? And that'll make it a pointer to a font feature and not a font feature by value, and then we can just return it. That gets rid of that error. Let's make placeholders for myswap2 and myswap4 that are just dummies, because I don't know. Incomplete. Myswap2 and myswap4 need to do endian swaps, but these are placeholders, so we can compile for now. What are they supposed to take? Myswap. We just take a pointer to U8. So myswap2 takes memory, which is a pointer to U8. And we don't do anything, and same with myswap4. What? Someone is calling these incorrectly. Myswap4 of star pointer. That's weird. I guess myswap4 wants a pointer to U32, and myswap2 wants a pointer to U16, probably, right? But why don't I just make it a pointer to U8 anyway? Oh, because we're returning. Okay. All right. Myswap2 will be a U16. Myswap4 will be a U32. Given void. Oh. Right. Wait, what? Oh, myswap. Okay. This is not an in-memory swap. It's returning the value. Whoops, return mem. Return mem. All right. Oh, that's why. Okay. Yeah. It was right. The callers were right. I got rid of this star because I thought I was doing an in-memory swap. I'm not doing an in-memory swap. I'm passing a value and I'm swapping the value. Right? Okay. So we got rid of those. It's funny, going over code that you wrote years ago. You don't really remember what it does, and you kind of guess, and maybe you get it wrong. And it's, you know, my faith when I see something like that, like I saw the star in the function, and I was like, is that really supposed to be dereferencing? Probably not, because when I converted this from C++, like the pointer syntax is different, and some things I changed to be by value when they were by pointer before, and whatever, and I thought maybe that was one of those things, but it wasn't. Um, yeah, I didn't love Titan Souls. Someone's asking about Titan Souls. I thought, it was all right. It wasn't like a terrible game or anything, but it's not for me. All right. So, undeclared identifier font, line 1355. This is when I need meta-x compile and just go through all the lines, but I don't have that hooked up. And I probably never will, because I'll be switching editors first. Return font. No, I want to return it. So I'm iterating through the dynamic fonts, and each one is called it, and I'm returning the one that passes this sieve of rejecting things. Let's get this one down here. Undeclared identifier I, line 1026. So this is a bitwise and. If we're asking for lining figures is small caps. Or no, it's, lining figures is when, basically, it's like small caps for digits, for numeric digits. I used it in Braid for the speedrun. It was pretty cool. Okay, so what are we saying here? Undeclared identifier I. So we're iterating over the temporary glyphs. We've got a pointer to each one. We dereference that to a glyph by value. But we've got a pointer. So we don't need temporary glyphs of I, right? We just need pointer.utf32 or glyph.utf32. Doesn't really matter. Why am I assigning glyph? What is single substitute? See, that looks suspicious. Like, a single substitute actually wants a pointer to a glyph. So as soon as I compile this, it's probably going to complain about that. Oh. UTF-32. Oh, wait. Temporary glyphs is a pointer? Wait, temporary glyph. Okay. This is not by value, right? This is an array of pointers to glyph data. So why am I taking the pointer every time? I don't see why I would do that. I would do that if I was going to substitute something out, but I'm not substituting anything, right? So why don't I just do this? All right. Is digit. Oh, I don't have an is digit. Oh, okay. Let's do that. Is digit. So how do I write is digit in this language? Well, I'm going to say low is cast of, I need to change this syntax, this character syntax. Or did I? Did I change the character syntax yet? I don't know. No, I didn't. Okay. It's on my list. So low is going to be casting that to U32. Actually, do I even need to do that? Can I just say return? Let's just say low, high, 9, return, tf, low, and high. I think that'll just work. Yeah? All right. I mean, I could have just put those constants in here. Let me try that. Yeah, let's just do that. It'll be maximally readable. Okay. Well, are there any questions about what's going on? Is anybody like confused about what the hell I'm doing or what the point of any of this is? Forgot what I'm doing now. Undeclared identifier pointer. Oh, that's why. Right, I was. Okay. I hope somebody caught this while I was talking about. Well, I'm just wrangling all this font code into another language. Okay. Right. This single, that's why I did a pointer. All right. So I'm iterating over this array of temporary glyphs. Remember, glyphs, each glyph is like a font character that I'm rendering. And I'm substituting sometimes, right? So yes, glyph. I'm going to make something called glyph. And under certain conditions, like if it's lining figures and I'm asking for small caps and stuff, I'm going to substitute. Right? Okay, so basically, here's what this whole loop does, right? So if you've got some sentence of characters like this that's upper and lower case, if you want to do small caps, you actually have to substitute out the glyphs for the lowercase characters with the glyphs in the font for small caps characters, because those will be in a different place, right? So if I'm rendering in small caps style, then I replace all the lowercase characters with small caps. And if I'm asking for lining figures, then I replace numbers with lining figures. So that's all this loop is doing, right? Is it's yeah. Anyway, why did I recompile the compiler? I don't know. Find or create glyph is not a field of some struct. Oh, that's the old. It percolated down there for some reason. Unicode next character. Oh, okay. I don't. I'm going to hotwire that one as an incomplete function because I don't want to port all my Unicode stuff yet. It's not that long, and it'll be good to have a little Unicode library. But maybe that should be wrapped up into other string stuff, like the way strings are basically handled. I don't know. So for now, so Unicode next character. These are UTF-8. These are UTF-8 strings that I'm dealing with. So UTF-8. A UTF-8 Unicode character can be between 1 or 4, or maybe even more than 4 bytes long in special circumstances. So you actually need to look at the contents of the thing if you're going to skip to a next character. It's not like, if you're using 8-bit per character ASCII strings or something, you can just add one, right? You can't do that. So the goal of this character, or the goal of this function, is to skip to the next character. And I'm just going to say return s plus 1 because, that's how we're going to roll for a while. All right, 902. Do glyph substitutions. Right. I should actually, so I'm saying it's missing the argument effect flags. It's a confusing error message because I'm giving effect flags. But actually, the reason it's saying that is because in the function here, effect flags is argument 2, and I didn't give enough arguments. And this is a case where error messages used to be clearer, and then I did all that stuff about default arguments, and now they're a little bit, less clear. But that's easy to fix. I'm not going to worry about it right now. All right. So we're reducing the number of errors here. That's not bad. Let's go for some more undeclared idents. Glyph indices, 1121. What was that trying to do? Glyph indices is a member of font coverage table. So I just want result.glyph indices. Here I'm being a good person and checking for null. So here's another thing, right? I have certain things marked up, like these are still in the old style of a pointer and a count. And before this code is totally done, I want to convert all those to use native arrays as well. But I'm doing one thing at a time because, there's just a lot of problems. You paste in code from another programming language, it's not going to just compile for you. Okay, this finder create glyph. Yeah, I'm obviously trying to do a dot function call. Let me fix one of those. And then the other one will be my guinea pig for making the error message better. Missing argument. Find or create glyph. Okay, wait. Yeah. Same thing. I keep forgetting. So all of these used to be calls to member functions. And because I'm being much more data-oriented, whatever used to be the this pointer needs to get explicitly passed. And in some cases, I've forgotten to do that. In many cases, actually. All right, so I've still got one of this bad error message down here. I'm going to leave that and not fix it because I want to know why that's happening. So now I'm going to go get all these. A lot of these are probably empty structs or something that I didn't define, like ftint is FreeType's int type. And these are all things defined by FreeType, except for this one, glyph indices, which is another one of the same thing I just fixed, right? So result.glyph indices sub I equals stuff. All right. Oh, undeclared identifier I, right? Because it's it. Because we didn't name it. Okay, this is weird. This is a case where the language syntax, well, no, this is a case where something just isn't working. Clean up. Oh, wait. Why do I need a cast here? U16 should seamlessly up convert to S64, right? So this function, read2 from offset, wants an S64 of what offset into this memory. We're just reading a number out of some memory, right? it decided is whatever type glyph count is. It's a U16, unsigned 16-bit number, because that's what read to from offset returns, and it got defined up here. Now, the problem is, well, because that's a U16, that times 2 is a U16, which is maybe not good by itself, but because, if this is supposed to be up to 64,000, then you multiply by 2, it could overflow. Which is why it's good to have these kind of error messages, because they bring your attention to this kind of thing. But since I'm passing it to an argument that's S64, it should just implicitly cast. I don't know if that broke or if for some reason in some weird case that never worked. So I've put a little to-do here. For now, I'm going to cast it to S64. $11.29. I've got more glyph indices. Oh, wait. Right, I guess I had it before made a local. Okay, I'll keep it the way it was, right? I'm going to make this a local. The real problem was I left out the colon, right? So we'll leave this a local for a while. It's a little less verbose. And then we assign it to the result down here. Undeclared identifier I again. I'm loving the I's today. I'm just going to put it there. I'm undecided for simple iterator variables if I want to name them I, or if I want to use it, or if I only want to use it for like more like pointery thing. I don't know. Oh, here's another one of those errors where it's the location info is not. Let me fix that. So if you saw the last stream, you saw sometimes I create intermediate values in the compiler and the location info doesn't get set, and then the error message is bad. And this is one such case. So I'm going to break on that. I'm going to break on that error. And I'm going to chase down who is causing that error. Visual Studio! So Visual Studio doesn't correctly save your breakpoints. Like you exit it and then breakpoints that were disabled are like now enabled and whatever. And I don't understand. All right. So, oh, I don't have this running the right program. We've got to run Traveler first, right? Okay, so now the way I track this down is I say, whoops, I say, what is, come on, oh, it's in the wrong window. What is loose arrow S? It's 17589. You guys may have seen me do this last time. So I'm going to break here. Condition asked S is 17589. That's an interesting number. And that'll tell me who is making this, because this always gets called right after you construct something, a node in the tree. And whoever is doing that is not setting the value, right? So we're setting up the inferred type of a literal. And we're doing that by making a new thing. And we're not copying the location info from literal to definition. All right. So now when we run, we should see this same error message, but over here we should have a better place to look. Yes. I mean, it's just pointing to the same line a little bit earlier, but you got to fix these things. In fact, I fixed some things. All right. So we wanted signed got unsigned in level or in line 1137. It's basically the same problem. Yeah, this is a U16 again. You know what? I'm going to do this. And I'm going to say I is cast it to S64, cleanup. Why do I need this cast? All right. So now we're really getting down to this meat of like stuff that's not really defined yet. So ftint, that's really annoying. Okay, wait, it's only used in FreeType. And I sort of asked friends for a poll of should I inherit all FreeType's lame types? Like in C++ and C, there's this, like all these APIs, you know, they redefine their own version of like all the integer types and stuff, and it's really annoying and stupid. And I'm just not going to stand for that. So I'm just going to define these more specifically, right? If something is legitimately its own type, like, hey, it's a struct of something, then it can go ahead and be that. But something like, oh, FreeType int, that's completely useless. So let's get rid of it. All right. So now I assume that I just didn't define any of these. Let's take a look. Glyph metrics and glyph format. I don't have, whoops, ft, whoops, I miss, ft glyph metrics. Oh, that's a struct by value. See, this is not nice because I have to know how big that is. So I have to like fully ft glyph format. These are, well, actually, no. Oh, here's the thing about FreeType. God, now I have to dig out FreeType again. FreeType doesn't have a very consistent naming convention. Some of these variables that are like this are actually pointers to things, and some of them are by value. And I am going to have to go look that up. But first, I'm going to take a 5-minute tea break. So if anyone has questions, go ahead and type them in the window, and I will answer them while the water is boiling. I do not see questions. I do not see questions. Any thoughts so far on how I'll do C foreign function interface? I already have C foreign function interface. That's how I render graphics and all that stuff, is by calling into OpenGL. There's a libffi, I think it's called, that just does that. Or did I use a different one? It's just a library that does it for you. It's fine. Do I rewrite my own version of FreeType? No. Although Sean Barrett has an STB TrueType library that's, I guess, pretty good, but I think it's not as fast at rendering as FreeType. So I'm sticking with FreeType for now. Although maybe I would have rather used Sean's stuff. I don't know. Maybe. In the very first stream, I mentioned that implicit type coercions are wrong. I don't think all of them are wrong. I think to the extent that C++ does them, they're wrong. Now, when I did that first stream, I was thinking that I would go in the direction that the Go programming language does, where they basically disallow all conversions. But when I started programming that way, I found it was super annoying and not actually what you want. So now there's a certain limited set of coercions that are allowed to happen implicitly. It's a smaller set than what happens in C or C++. But, you know, an integer to a bigger sized integer is legal, and as long as you're going in this unsigned to signed or unsigned to unsigned direction, or signed to signed, right? Signed to unsigned is no good because you could lose your negative number. And, you know, float to double is fine. And that's about it. The big one that bites you all the time in C++ is implicit conversion to bool. There's no such thing, for example. How closely would my Emacs replacement resemble Emacs? Not very closely at all. Do I make a texture atlas with one of each glyph, or create a new texture for each string? There is a texture atlas, and there's one of each glyph at each size, right? So I don't stretch the texture ever. And, you know, I try to do smart things about packing things of similar heights together in the same line and whatnot. Maybe later on, I'm not going to get to the point tonight probably where I'm actually rendering glyphs out. But when I get to that point, it'll be fun to just draw the textures so you can see what that looks like. The program used to convert the FreeType C++ was me pasting the code and retyping things. It's actually a little bit too much of a tedious process, and I'd like to write something that is not really a converter, but that just sort of massages the strings so that they're closer, you know? I think that'll save me a lot of time ultimately. All right, I've got to start searching FreeType to find out if any of these things are by value. If they're by pointer, if they're actually pointers, right, then I can declare them as empty structs. And probably most of them are really pointers, but some of them might not be. Pain in the ass. Shouldn't do this in your API. If it's a pointer, just say it's a pointer. God. All right. So I'm going to turn off the desktop for 1 second because I want to pop open my witness IDE, because the witness is a C++ program that links FreeType, and I should be able to then use that instance of Visual Studio to search around in FreeType, hopefully. But when I pop open the witness, I want to make sure I don't reveal any gameplay spoilers. Oops, sorry. I just upgraded. We just moved the whole office actually to using Visual Studio 2013 for the witness. And my link goes to the wrong project file now. I need to open. Where is it? Where is it? It's in the source folder. There we go. All right. Any spoilers? Spoiler. Let me just close all of these. Close all documents. Let's not reveal too many of the files in the witness. All right. Let me just see. Maybe it won't even have this, right? But like, and it doesn't find it. Great. Let me at least turn the desktop back on. So maybe I can just look at I'll look at ftface, something that I use directly, right? And then we'll jump to definition. No, not peek. I don't want to peek it. I want to go to it. Of course, this being Visual Studio, I can only see like 5 lines at once. All right, so this is where the files are. Oh God, right. I might need to download a frickin' search program. Oh, maybe some of them are here. Okay. So ft glyph slot is a glyph slot rec pointer, right? So is that one of the ones? Glyph slot. No, I already changed those. See, I'm changing all of them to what they should be in the same spirit as changing those integer types and stuff. All right. So let's look at the list of mysteries. Glyph metrics and glyph format. I doubt either of those are in this file. Glyph met. Nope. All right. Can I search in the subfolder? No, because it's Visual Studio. It doesn't believe in that. Well, I'm going to download. Anyone have a favorite Windows file search program? How much of the Braid engine are we using directly for the witness? Probably not very much of it has survived. Will the witness be mod friendly? No. Let me see. I downloaded some lousy file search program. I mean, it's not lousy. It does the job, but Ultra Search it was called. So I'll download that. Ultra Search. Freeware for ultra fast file search. Download. Download for North America. All right. Well, it's a fast download at least. English next. So why is there an installer? I just want to run it. All right. All right. We're going to be searching ultra. Oh, this isn't the program I was thinking of. This one's a little bit more professional looking. All right. Let's search in witness. source sup FreeType source. And let's search for do I have to download professional to search for a substring? That would be insane. Oh, come on. What does this let me do? I guess I gimped this program since I downloaded it, or maybe I licensed it, but if it doesn't let me search for a string in the trial version, I'm not going to buy it. Like, that's absurd. I guess I'm using the 30-day free trial. That's what I just... Well, I'm glad that everybody gets to see this fun. I don't... This is garbage. This is apparently not the file program. I just opened that because I saw it in my start bar on my other computer, but apparently it is not the right program. File seek, I think, is the right program. Let me get that. Ultra search. Remove programs. You're out of here for wasting my time. I would have bought you if you'd let me search for strings. File seek. Download. Download. I think this is the one that looks more gimpy, but if it'll actually do the right things. No. Alright. Like why Windows doesn't have good searching in files, I don't know. Actually, it's looking better here. On my laptop that has the high DPI display, like all this stuff is messed up. Alright, so let's go see witness source sup FreeType source. Let's select that folder, please. And query. Now it took 10 minutes just to find out. All right. So we're looking for FT glyph metrics. Where is it? So if you manage to have a small, one of the reasons why I like small source code and not things like LLVM and whatever is you don't need to do this stuff. Like if you have one file and you want to look for a definition in it, it's like in that file. There's no question about what's going on. All right. There. No. No. These guys are taking pointers, so I assume it's... All right. Well, let's drop back one. Because maybe it's in the includes. I just want to know a simple thing. Okay, here we go. How do I jump there? All right. No, wait. This is the file that I know it's not in. No, it is. FT glyph metrics. I thought I searched for, maybe it was a different one that I searched for. All right. This is fine. We're finally getting to information that we care about. So, all right, we already had a size metrics. Let's get the glyph metrics in here. And you know, this is a little annoying that I have to do this, but here's exactly what I am doing. So welcome to high-tech source code conversion. Should I make, yeah, I'm going to make a macro for this. Control X, begin, start, delete, colon, ft pause, end, wait, e. All right, that wasn't too bad. Well, I think I have ft pause. Yeah, I'm using it elsewhere. So that should be okay. All right, one less error after that big wild goose chase. But now we're in better shape. So what's glyph format? Glyph format is the one I searched for, I think. I should do a regex search and like do a search for struct type defing like we saw, but okay, wait, let's skip the HTMLs. We don't want HTMLs. I probably should case sensitive. Advanced, case sensitive. Let's try again. And let's stick to star.h, star.c, search. All right, now I get to guess what the, is it there? No. Is it there? Whatever. All right. Oh. ft_image.h. It's an enum. Of a bunch of stuff that I don't know how big it is. Looks like 32 bits. All right. So I'm going to do this. By the way, for some of this stuff, I'm guessing, or you know, like if I get sizes wrong and stuff, I'm going to have a whole debugging process later, like where I run a C program that tells me how big all the structs are and make sure that that matches here and all that. But for now, I'm just going to say this is an enum u32 and placeholder 0, right? Oh, wait. I forget my own enum syntax, don't I? How do I do enums? Enum, that looks right. Oh, you don't put a semicolon, that's what's going on. All right, we're really getting down to fewer things. FT bitmap. What is an FT bitmap? Is bitmap size one of the ones? Or no? Got too many windows open. FT bitmap. Well, you know, it's probably in this file, right? ft bitmap new, bitmap copy, bitmap embolden, bitmap convert. Wait, ft bitmap space. It's already. It's not in this file. ft bitmap doesn't seem to be defined in ft bitmap.h. You know, it's probably in FreeType.h, right? Right. Wait. Wouldn't I have seen it? Oh, yeah. How do I open find in files? Oh, I actually could have searched from here. All right. Too late. Now I just want to open this one file. Can I drag from here to here? Probably not. Let's see. Oh, I can. Score one for the team. All right. ft bitmap. Where is it? Jerks. This is like I could just get a FreeType project and compile it, and then the compiler would like know where things come from. But like what gets included before FreeType.h that would define? It's not ft2 build.h. That's just build things. Okay, here's where we go to Google and we say ft bitmap struct declaration. And where the hell is it? ft bitmap. All right. ft image.h. There it is. All right. This is probably exactly what the internet search said. Maybe I should have just done that, but it's better to get it from your own header files because they might be different, and if they're different, you got problems. So, ft bitmap is this is so silly. Like it should be much easier for me to do than it apparently is. Yeah. I'll just say, yeah, I'll say S32, width S32, pitch S32, buffer is a pointer to U8, num grays is S16, pixel mode is S8, palette mode is S8, and palette is a pointer to void. And why not? Let's line them up. Let's line them up all nice. It's maybe a little too much space, but whatever. I hope I didn't. Let's double check that. Okay, int, unsigned char star, short, freaking Emacs, S8, S8, pointer to void. All right. Good. Good. Signed versus unsigned, line 16, 516. It's using our new stuff. Data.width. So data is a glyph data, which is my structure. My width is a U16, and theirs is an S32. Let's just make it an S32. Now this is, again, this is one of those broken, like an S32 ought to up, oh no, it shouldn't, right, because signed to unsigned is not a valid cast. Well, can you ever have a negative width? I guess you can, because FreeType structs do. FreeType structs are negative, so are we. Sigh. All right. Signed, not negative. Signed. 518. All right. So now we're passing a sign to bit shift right. This is the thing is, oh, I think I have a version of that that's signed. I think it's called arithmetic. Like, right, you want a version of shift always that just puts zeros on the left, and you want a version bit shift right arithmetic is the signed one. All right. So now the problem is whatever. 519. Okay, so we just made these. What is data offset x? So we just made those 32s. So let's make these 32s. No, it's wasting a lot of space. I'll just cast them. So what this casting is doing, right, is it's making explicit all the places that I could be losing information, which when you're dealing with like 16 and 32-bit kind of stuff is this is messy, is good, except here I'm being a little bit confounded by the fact, again, that I don't have a bit shift operator. So this is returning U64, which I then have to cast back down. Again, in an operator, you wouldn't need to cast up and down. I've got two casts here that wouldn't happen at all if I had an operator. And my assert, I can't say assert 0 right now. I have to put a bool. So now what's happening is all these functions that couldn't compile before now can compile, and then now we're getting type check errors because they're able to type check against types that I've now defined, right? These types were missing before, so it can compile. Okay. Right now, basically, what I'm doing is I'm just going to go through and I'm just inserting a bunch of casts to make things compile and make things work. And I'm trying to make reasonable decisions, but I'm also just uglifying the code, like, because it's going to have a bunch of casts that weren't there. But because it's not C-style casts, because they're all explicitly marked cast, I can go review that later and say, okay, how do I get rid of all these casts? Like, what are the right types for my variables that'll minimize the amount of casting, right? But that's going to be a later step than just getting this to compile and work. Incremental. So 538, geez. Well, I've got a font line, which is some struct that I define. So part of what's weird here is basically, well, because you're dealing with something like FreeType that wants to be relatively economical about how it's storing things, you have all these small numbers. And I don't know, like if they're unsigned, you have to deal with that decision anytime you want to store them Or if they're signed, you have to deal with that decision if you ever want to store them somewhere unsigned. So maybe the answer is not to use unsigned things, etc. All right. So this is where having an IDE would make this faster, but bitmap, cursor, x and y, those are ints. I don't like that idea. I should be explicit about, oh, that's mine. Okay, so this doesn't have to match FreeType because it's my struct, so that's fine. I can call it an int. Ints right now are signed 32 by default, but I'm thinking I'm going to make them signed 64, probably. Seems like a better choice. Anyway, so that's an int on the right, and data is, what is data? Data is a glyph data. It's also mine. U16. So I'm casting an int to a U16. What is bitmap cursor? Oh, this is the thing. So a font line is like I said, when I'm writing out the font texture, a font line is, for characters of a certain height, they'll go in a particular font line. And if your height is too high or too low for that, I'll make a new line for you, right? So the bitmap cursor is where within the bitmap you are. So it doesn't make sense for these x0, y0, and cursor x and cursor y to be different types. They should really be the same type. And I think I'm going to make them U16s, probably. Right? Those are U16. I'm going to make these U16. That might trigger some other problems. And operator minus, left is signed, right? So the map's width. This is, see, okay. Using unsigned things, I made them unsigned because, like, it's a texture map. It starts at 0, but in reality, what I find, it's not really worth it, because then you have to have this pain in the ass every time you're going to signed from unsigned. Or sorry, the other way around. Anytime you have signed and you want to go to that unsigned, you have problems because you can't implicitly do that. And I do want to be strict about that. So I think the answer is you just don't use unsigned that much. Like, I think, yeah. All right. So we've got something else that's probably an int, right? Bitmap cursor y, line cursor y should be as well S16. Of course, that limits us to textures of like 32,000 in each direction, but we're not going to go above that for now. All right, we got another 548. Bitmap data, dest y, j. We've got a couple pluses on this line. Which one is character 54? It's got to be this one, because these are both ints, dest y and j. Okay, this is a bug in the compiler, this one. So I might just start investigating it and maybe call this stream to an end. After that, the deal is I'm doing a plus on two integers, and one's signed 16 and the other signed 32. It should just implicitly cast the signed 16 to signed 32 and add them. And that used to work fine. And I think I broke it in this recent wave of stuff. So I think it's probably a good idea for me to debug this rather than pass over it, because there's probably several other, like I said, there were a couple casts earlier that where I just stuck them in and I put a comment saying like, hey, this cast shouldn't really be necessary. Why do I have to do it? This is another one of those. And at this point, I've hit enough of these that I'm like, okay, this is the last straw. I'm going to start attacking these casts. But first, we'll take a break for questions. If anyone has more questions about anything that's going on. I'm going to close my witness. Questions. No questions. I guess people are talking about Walk Monster. We may do Linux. Like, nobody actually buys games on Linux right now. Linux people will tell you that they do, but it's a very, very small percentage of game sales. So it's a nice thing to do just to be nice and support the operating system and stuff, but if it's a hard enough port, it's really hard to justify. Like, the more complicated the game is, the more expensive it is to port, and so you could end up losing $100,000 porting a game to Linux, like, easily, right? So we just have to look at it and just see. Like, if we get Vulkan running, and if Linux gets decent Vulkan drivers and stuff, it'll make it a lot easier. We have relatively complicated shaders, and trying to do those in GL and Linux, oh my god, like trying to get those to work consistently would be a nightmare. Nightmare. I talked about implicit casts already. I answered that exact question of what I allow. Yeah, someone's saying that Go started with 32-bit ints and went to 64. I think so. Like, in this language especially, int means I'm not thinking that hard about how big this should be, right? That's the reason. The reason I have all these very specific sized ints is so that you can express your intent, right? And if your intent is I'm not thinking that hard about this, then you probably don't care that much about how big it is in terms of resource usage, and you probably want it to be, not overflow very easily. And modern processors are often 64 bits, and files are often more than 4 gigabytes large. So 64-bit ints just kind of makes sense. And if you're on an embedded processor and those are slow because they're big, just don't use them, right? Be specific about the size. That's, I think, the right answer for this kind of thing. Someone's asking, just for the sake of getting concrete word, is the situation identical for Mac in terms of porting the witness? Yeah, probably. In some sense, Mac might be a little easier because, like, if we're doing iOS, but I don't know. Those may be diverging enough at this point in terms of GL support. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we just have to see. It's a similar situation. The thing is, more people buy games on Mac than on Linux, so it's easier to financially support a port on Macs. As FreeType, what I'll be using going forward, I don't know. I might use STB's TrueType thing. Right now, I'm wishing I did because this is being a giant pain. But we'll see. It doesn't matter too much. Really, what I'm doing, so, getting the font rendering working is an interesting thing, and that's all fine. But really, what I'm doing is just putting the compiler through its paces and finding little bugs and fixing them, and just getting more real code into the language to see what I think about certain issues. So as long as I'm doing that, then it's all right. It doesn't matter if it's FreeType or anything, right? integrating a relatively big, complicated library like FreeType is a pretty interesting test. If I were integrating STB TrueType, it would be less of a test because it's a less complicated thing. What would I say about not having int and just sized ints? I don't like that because I want to be able to express the intent that I haven't thought that much about how big this is, right? That's important. If I put S32 or S64 everywhere, you might think that I had a plan for why it's that big. And if I don't, because I'm just drafting this code out or whatever, you should know, right? So int is very meaningful, right? Unlike in, well, it sort of means the same thing in C, but it's unfortunate in C because the size isn't specified, and that causes all kinds of problems. But it's for accuracy of communication that you have both explicit size and not explicit size. No, int is not the machine word size. No, that is a horrible mistake in C and C++. That changes based on your target platform. I'm not going to repeat that mistake. Will I add types like standardint.h as int fast t? I have no idea what that is, but it's not actually really fast compared to anything that somebody who's a real optimization person would do, so I wouldn't bother. Yeah, I don't know how the iOS version of the Witness is going to do either. Like, maybe a lot of people will play it and maybe it'll drop off the face of the earth because it's hard to get things noticed sometimes on iOS because there's so many games there. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll try to do a good job on the touchscreen controls. If my game sells just to YouTubers and Let's Players, would you be happy? I don't think they're asking me, maybe. If my game sells to YouTubers and Let's Players only, then I'm poor all of a sudden because I've spent a great deal of money on it. It'll still be fine because it's the best game I've ever worked on by far. But I would like it if more people than that bought it. I'm not going to switch from Emacs to someone else's text editor because I'm going to switch from Emacs to a text editor that uses this programming language as its extension language in the way that Emacs uses Emacs Lisp. So, because nobody else has this language available right now, nobody else can do that. However, if I don't do it anytime soon and then I release the language and then somebody else does it, then maybe I do switch to their editor. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what order these events happen in. I'm down to the little chip crumbs. Yeah, Witness doesn't use virtual joysticks. Don't worry. I hate virtual joysticks on touchscreens. They're terrible. Witness doesn't have them. Okay. Let me get back to looking at this. Okay, now I'm confused. Loose bits is 32, ground bits is 16. Oh, no, wait. Okay, never mind. I was confused. This is a legitimate error. It's saying I gave it 32 bits, but it wanted 16, which would be a... Oh, no, right. Okay. No, the reason this isn't legit is this is just a plus, so... Like, it's not like there's an authoritative type. Like, it ought to cast one to the other. So I must have broken that bidirectional casting. And I might be too tired tonight to figure out the right way to do it, but let's give it a shot. All right, so here's a function. Let me show you the calling site. So, this is in, like, if we're doing a binary operator, hey, blah, blah, blah. If we're doing minus or minus equals or plus equals, maybe it's pointer math, but if it's not pointer math, then it's just regular math. So we're operating on ints or floats or something like that. And we're calling this check that types match with both of these. And what this function is supposed to do is treat these as equals and insert a cast on either one as necessary. So that's this function. And, it's returning a pointer to a pointer to A. Because we pass asked expression pointers, usually that's our usual thing. And we have a pointer to that because we want to be able to stuff in a cast that wraps that. For example, if I wanted to cast S16 to S32, I would make a little cast node and put it in the syntax tree. So that is calling, it's really just calling that one way. That's no good. Oh, wait, maybe, okay, wait. A and B, right. Okay, I actually modified this to take both as well. All right. So for some reason, so in this function that I'm in right now, this is actually a pretty big complicated function that checks any kind of like type wanted versus type given. And then switchable expression is, like I said, if you want to insert a cast, like you can stuff it in those pointers. And all that's fine, except for some reason down here, I'm calling this number check and solidify that gets rid of those arguments for some reason. Like, why am I doing that? And I have a feeling I'm not really going to attack this tonight, actually, because this like number solidification, the way it works, is a little bit outdated. It's like a thing that I don't necessarily like how it works anymore. But let's take a look at what we're doing. So number flag solidified is a thing that tells you if the number you're looking at is of a known size and signedness and stuff or not, right? Like if you define something in the language like well, something like here I'm specifying these. Let's just say this, right? So 0.03, that could be a 32-bit float. It could be a 64-bit float. Nobody knows. We haven't specified. So this would not have number flag solidified set on it. And then that would get determined at the usage site. So if you wanted to pass this to a function that takes float 32, it would work. And if you wanted to pass it to a function that takes float 64, that would work. And the reason is because this is not solidified. So then, this looks at, and that's called the loose type when it's not necessarily solidified. And this looks at the ground type and does things to the loose type to make it match the ground type, which is inappropriate for something like operator plus, because there is no ground type or loose type. There's just two types. And why I'm punting and going to number check and solidify, I don't know. Right, so one of these, okay. Let's just see. Right. Wait, okay, I'm not sorry, I'm tired. I was like, oh, I'm inside this block, but no, I'm not. The curly brace is right there, man. So all these things are actually equal because I would have bailed out otherwise. Oh, that's why I'm in number check and solidify. This is probably supposed to take care of that. So if they're peers, if we have switchable expressions for both of them, then I was supposed to swap them. Right. If I swap them so that wanted is the bigger one, then this number check and solidify will do the right thing. However, that swap is up in this earlier block. So I'm going to do something really horrible. I'm a bad person, but I'm just going to paste this down here. And I'm going to mark it as cut and paste, factor me together, clean me up, right? And I'm going to put that in my file. Well, hopefully this actually, right? So I'm going to search for this line later in the code and clean it up. But for now, I want to make sure this actually fixes the problem. Well, I guess I don't need to do this, but because I'm not using those. It didn't fix the problem after all that. What? Well. Why didn't it fix the problem? Sometimes that happens. Wait, what? That was confusing. Well, now I'm calling it from a totally different... Oh, you know, I probably was calling it from here the whole time. I need to think about if that's even... Yeah. Still doesn't fix the problem. I don't understand why this doesn't fix the problem. This is confusing me. This is confusing me. Wanted number size is now 32. Given number size is 16. And I'm not using switchable expression wanted and all that, so it's fine that I commented it out. So okay, this is confusing me. That shouldn't be... What line is the error on? 548. Oh, line character. I don't know how to skip to a character in Emacs. 53. 1 in the 10, 11, 12. All right, so it's that. I should do the thing where it like prints out the line with the little caret pointing at the thing in the error message. Okay, I'm confused as to why that swap isn't doing the right thing, but I'm also confused as to why J is triggering this case. So this case of having like a number literal is supposed to be for that kind of situation where there's a constant, right? If you declare something as a constant and don't specify the type, then you have to be some type that's at least big enough to hold that number, right? And that's supposed to be what this is for. Now, why that is set here is a giant mystery to me. Like I literally don't even know. Number literal low.